The massive glass dome of the Galactic Military Academy stretched across the red horizon of Kepler 442b. Inside the dome, beings from 12 different worlds walked through corridors that hummed with energy shields and floating holographic displays. This was the first time in galactic history that so many species had gathered in one place to share military knowledge. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching alien cadets practice combat maneuvers in the training halls below. Her simple black uniform looked plain compared to the shimmering armor and energy suits worn by the other instructors. She was the only human at the academy, and she could feel curious eyes watching her wherever she went. The Veltar moved like living flames, their bodies shifting between solid and energy forms as they pleased. The Zephyrians looked like walking crystals, their faceted heads reflecting light in rainbow patterns. The insectoid Krathen clicked and chittered as they moved with mechanical precision. Every species here had evolved beyond the need for basic physical training. They used technology to enhance their bodies, minds, and reflexes. Sarah touched the simple dog tags around her neck. They were made of plain steel, not quantum-enhanced metal like everything else in this place. These tags had survived 3 tours in the Titan Wars, where humans fought each other with bullets and bombs while the galaxy watched from their peaceful worlds. "You must be the human representative," a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see Instructor Kethvar, a tall Zephyrian, whose crystal body chimed softly when she moved. "I have read your species' military reports. Very primitive, but amusing." Sarah nodded politely. "We do what works for us." Kethvar's head tilted, light dancing across her crystalline features. "Your weapons, fire metal projectiles using chemical explosions. Most species abandoned such crude methods thousands of years ago. Why has your species not evolved beyond this?" "Maybe we never needed to," Sarah replied quietly. Down in the training hall, a group of Veltar cadets were showing off their plasma manipulation skills. Their leader, a young being named Zix Tal, created shapes of pure energy with casual gestures. A sword here, a spear there, each one glowing with enough heat to melt steel. The other cadets watched in admiration as Zixtal formed a plasma dart and hurled it across the room, where it exploded against a reinforced target. "Magnificent, is it not?" Kethvar asked. Young Zixtal comes from a military family that has served for 10,000 years. His great ancestor commanded fleets when your species was still living in caves. Sarah watched Zixtal create 3 plasma constructs at once, spinning them around his form like a deadly dance. The other alien cadets gathered to watch, their own species' representatives nodding with approval. This was what peak military evolution looked like to them. The perfect marriage of biological ability and energy manipulation. "When will you demonstrate human combat techniques?" Kethvar asked. "Tomorrow," Sarah said, "during the interspecies training exercise." Kethvar's crystal face seemed to smile, though it was hard to tell. "I confess, many of us are curious. Your species' techniques must be quite different from ours." Sarah continued watching Zixtal's display. The young Veltar was clearly talented, but there was something in his movements that reminded her of Academy cadets back on Earth. Too much flash. Not enough substance. He was performing for an audience instead of training for war. As if sensing her thoughts, Zixtal looked up at the observation deck. His energy form solidified into something roughly humanoid, and he gestured for his plasma constructs to circle faster around him. The display was clearly meant to impress the human observer. Sarah had seen this kind of showing off before. Young soldiers always wanted to prove themselves to the veterans, especially when they thought those veterans came from inferior backgrounds. During her time in the Special Forces, she had watched countless recruits try to impress her with fancy moves and expensive gear. The difference was that those human recruits could learn. They could adapt when their fancy moves failed them in real combat. They could survive when their expensive gear broke down in the field. Sarah wondered if the same was true for these alien cadets who had never known real hardship. The training session below ended, and the alien cadets began filing out of the hall. Zixtal remained behind, practicing his plasma manipulation alone. He was good. Sarah had to admit that. His control was precise, his energy output impressive. But there was something missing. Something that couldn't be taught in academies or programmed into enhancement systems. He is quite skilled, Kethvar observed, following Sarah's gaze. Perhaps tomorrow, you can learn something from watching him. Sarah finally turned away from the observation deck. Maybe, she said, or maybe he can learn something from watching me. As they walked back through the corridors of the academy, Sarah passed displays showing the military achievements of each represented species. The Veltar had conquered star systems with their energy mastery. The Zephyrians had built computational warfare systems that could predict battle outcomes before they began. The Krathen had bioengineered themselves into perfect soldiers. Humanity's display was smaller and less impressive. A few notes about their recent admission to the galactic community. Some technical specifications for their kinetic weapons. A brief mention of their unusual tendency to resolve conflicts through direct physical confrontation. What the display didn't mention was that humans had fought their way to the stars through pure determination. While other species had evolved beyond the need for physical struggle, humans had embraced it. They had turned their violent history into strength, their chaotic world into training ground. Tomorrow, Sarah would show them what that training had produced. The main training arena buzzed with excitement as representatives from all 12 species gathered to watch the interspecies demonstration. The massive chamber was designed to handle the most extreme training scenarios. Reinforced walls that could withstand plasma, cannon fire, energy shields that could contain small explosions, and medical systems capable of treating any known species. Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the arena floor, checking her gear one final time. Standard issue tactical boots, basic protective vest, simple fingerless gloves. No energy shields humming around her body. No quantum enhancement systems. No neural interface ports glowing on her temples. To the watching aliens, she looked impossibly vulnerable. The other instructors had tried to convince her to use the academy's safety equipment. Instructor Kethvar had offered her a Zephyrian kinetic shield. The Krathen representative had suggested bioenhancement injections to improve her reflexes. Even the academy's medical staff had prepared emergency systems in case the human instructor required immediate treatment. Sarah had politely declined everything. The human seems determined to make this demonstration as dangerous as possible, whispered Professor Velkim, a senior Veltar instructor, whose energy form flickered with concern. Perhaps we should postpone until proper safety measures are in place. Dean Thoss, the Academy's Krathen administrator, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The human signed all the safety waivers. If she wishes to proceed without protection, that is her choice. Though I confess, I do not understand why. In the arena, Zixtal and 3 other cadets from different species prepared their demonstration. They had been instructed to show basic combat techniques, the kind of training exercises used for first-year students. Simple energy projection, basic defensive maneuvers, elementary tactical positioning. But as the demonstration began, it became clear that basic meant something very different to aliens who manipulated energy with their thoughts. The Zephyrian cadet moved first, creating a complex holographic battlefield projection that showed multiple combat scenarios simultaneously. The crystalline being calculated optimal firing solutions and movement patterns in real time, displaying tactical awareness that human military computers could barely match. The Krathen cadet responded by bio-adapting her limbs into weapon configurations, her chitinous armor reshaping itself to provide optimal protection angles. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to track dozens of potential targets while moving in patterns too complex for unenhanced minds to follow. Zixtal stepped forward for the Veltar demonstration. His energy form blazed brighter as he prepared to show the gathered observers what true power looked like. Around him, plasma began to coalesce into various weapon forms. Traditional shapes like swords and spears, but also more exotic constructs that had no equivalent in primitive kinetic warfare. The alien audience murmured with appreciation as Zixtal demonstrated perfect control over forces that could level city blocks. This was military evolution at its finest. Beings who had transcended the need for crude physical weapons, and instead wielded the fundamental forces of the universe. Sarah watched from the sideline, her expression unreadable. To the aliens observing her, the human seemed strangely calm for someone witnessing such overwhelming displays of power. They expected awe or fear, or at least some acknowledgement of the vast technological gulf between humanity and the rest of galactic civilization. Instead, Sarah looked bored. Zixtal noticed the human's lack of reaction and felt a surge of irritation. This primitive being should be cowering in the face of such superior ability. She should be taking notes, asking questions, begging to understand how truly advanced species conducted warfare. The young Veltar decided to escalate his demonstration. Perhaps the human representative would like to observe a more advanced technique, Zixtal announced, his energy form pulsing with increased intensity. Something that better demonstrates the difference between primitive kinetic warfare and true energy mastery. The alien instructors exchanged concerned glances. This was supposed to be a basic demonstration, not a show of advanced combat techniques. But before anyone could intervene, Zixtal was already forming his most impressive construct. The plasma dart that took shape in his hands was not a training weapon. It was a combat-grade projectile designed for space warfare. Dense enough to punch through starship hulls, fast enough to cross the arena before organic reflexes could register its movement, hot enough to vaporize any known armor on contact. Zixtal, Professor Velkim called out in warning. That is not appropriate for... But the young cadet was already in motion, his pride and competitive instincts overriding his common sense. He had to show this human what real power looked like. He had to demonstrate why energy-based species ruled the galaxy, while humans still fought with crude projectiles. The plasma dart left his hands at nearly light speed, aimed directly at Sarah Chen's center mass. Time seemed to stretch as the deadly projectile crossed the arena. The alien observers began calculating funeral arrangements and medical interventions. Safety systems that were designed to protect enhanced beings would be useless against this level of destructive force. Nothing could move fast enough to intercept the plasma construct before it reached its target. Emergency shields began deploying automatically. But they were positioned to protect the audience, not the human in the firing line. Medical teams rushed toward intervention positions, though everyone knew they would be too late to matter. In the microseconds between the dart's launch and impact, 1,000 thoughts flashed through alien minds. How would they explain this to the human government? What would happen to interspecies relations? Why had they allowed this primitive being to participate without proper protection? But Sarah Chen simply raised her hand and caught the plasma dart like she was fielding a slow pitch in a childhood game. The arena fell absolutely silent. The plasma construct, dense enough to crater concrete, hot enough to melt tungsten, carrying enough kinetic force to stop a charging vehicle, flickered and died in her grip like a candle being snuffed out. Sarah turned to look at Zixtal, whose energy form had gone completely still with shock. When she spoke, her voice carried the patient tone of a teacher, addressing a promising but misguided student. "Sweetie," she said quietly, "aim correctly." The silence in the arena was complete. Not the quiet of a respectful audience, but the absolute stillness that follows something impossible. Alien breathing apparatus hummed. Energy fields crackled softly, but no one spoke. No one moved. Sarah Chen stood in the center of the training floor, her right hand still extended from catching the plasma dart. Wisps of residual energy flickered between her fingers before fading completely. She looked at her hand with mild interest, flexing her fingers as if checking for injury, then lowered her arm to her side. Zixtal's energy form flickered wildly, cycling through patterns that indicated extreme distress in Veltar physiology. His carefully maintained humanoid shape dissolved and reformed repeatedly as his consciousness struggled to process what he had witnessed. The plasma dart had been his finest creation. Dense enough to penetrate starship armor. Precise enough to hit a target across star systems. Powerful enough to level buildings. And this human had caught it with her bare hand. Professor Velkim was the first to regain any semblance of composure. His energy form stabilized as he floated down to the arena floor, approaching Sarah with movements that suggested someone approaching a dangerous explosive device. "Instructor Chen," he said carefully, his voice carrying harmonics of confusion and growing alarm. "What technology did you just employ? Our sensors detected no energy shields, no temporal distortion fields, no quantum manipulation matrices." Sarah looked up at the floating energy being with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout the entire demonstration. "No technology. I just caught it." The simplicity of her answer seemed to disturb the alien professor more than any technical explanation could have. Behind him, other instructors began descending to the arena floor, their various forms moving with the cautious steps of beings encountering something beyond their understanding. Dean Thoss, the Krathan administrator, approached with his bio-enhanced sensors extended. His insectoid features clicked and whirred as he ran every diagnostic scan his species had developed over millennia of studying combat phenomena. "Impossible," he chittered, mandibles clattering with agitation. "Plasma at that density maintains temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees. The kinetic force alone should have shattered every bone in your appendage. Our instruments show no evidence of energy absorption, no phase shifting, no molecular restructuring." Sarah shrugged. "It wasn't that hot when I caught it." This statement caused a ripple of confusion through the gathered aliens. Dr. Kethvar, the Zephyrian instructor, chimed with crystalline distress as her computational matrix struggled to process the logical contradiction. "Energy cannot simply cease to exist," she stated, her voice carrying the musical tones of crystal resonance. "Thermodynamics is a universal constant. Plasma maintains its temperature and momentum regardless of what intercepts it. This is fundamental physics." "Maybe," Sarah said, walking over to where Zixtal still hovered in his unstable energy state. "But I've been catching things my whole life. You get a feel for it." The young Veltar cadet finally managed to stabilize his form enough to speak. "What? What are you?" he whispered, his energy voice trembling with something that might have been fear. Sarah considered the question seriously. "Human," she said. "From Earth. We play a lot of ball games there." The answer was so mundane, so completely inadequate to explain what they had witnessed, that several aliens actually checked their universal translators to make sure they were working correctly. Professor Velkim floated closer, his energy form pulsing with intense curiosity. Instructor Chen, with respect, "Ball games do not prepare organic matter to intercept weapons-grade plasma constructs. Please explain the actual mechanism by which you accomplished this feat." Sarah looked around at the circle of alien faces, energy beings, crystalline entities, bio-enhanced insects, and others whose expressions all showed variations of the same thing. Complete bewilderment mixed with growing unease. "Okay," she said, settling into the patient tone she had used when training new recruits back on Earth. "Let me show you what I mean." She turned to Zixatal. "Can you make another dart? Something simpler this time." The young Veltar looked to his professor for guidance. Professor Velkim hesitated, then nodded slowly. "A basic training construct only. Minimal energy density." Zixtal extended his form and created a plasma dart that glowed with soft blue light, still hot enough to cause serious burns, but not the devastating weapon he had launched before. He held it ready but did not release it. "Now watch carefully," Sarah said to the assembled aliens. "The dart is going to travel in a straight line, from his position to where I'm standing. Physics says it has to follow that path." But physics also says everything follows predictable patterns. She shifted her stance slightly, her weight settling on the balls of her feet. Her hands hung loose at her sides, but her eyes never left Zixtal's energy form. The thing about patterns is that once you understand them, you can work with them. Speed doesn't matter if you know where something's going to be. Temperature doesn't matter if you know how energy wants to flow. Zixtal released the dart. This time, the alien observers could see what happened. Sarah's hand moved to intercept the plasma construct, but not in a straight line. Her motion curved to match the dart's trajectory, her fingers positioned to channel its energy rather than simply block it. When her hand closed around the plasma, the energy flowed through her movement and dispersed harmlessly, rather than fighting against an immovable barrier. The dart flickered out, its energy redistributed into heat that warmed her gloves slightly but caused no damage. "You see?" Sarah said, turning back to her audience. "It's not about stopping the energy. It's about understanding where it wants to go and helping it get there safely." The silence that followed was different from before. Instead of shock, it was the quiet of minds working frantically to process new information that challenged everything they thought they knew about physics, warfare, and the nature of reality itself. Dr. Kethvar's crystal form chimed with rapid calculation harmonics. This suggests an understanding of energy dynamics that our most advanced theoretical models do not encompass. "How did your species develop such techniques?" Sarah smiled for the first time since the demonstration began. "We had good teachers." What teachers?" Professor Velkim asked urgently. "Gravity," Sarah said simply. "Weather, wild animals, a planet that tried to kill us every day until we learned to pay attention." The Emergency Academic Council convened within hours of Sarah's demonstration. Representatives from every major university and research institution in the galaxy joined the session through quantum communication links, their holographic forms crowding the Academy's main conference hall. Dr. Kethvar stood at the center of the room, her crystalline body chiming with rapid data processing as she compiled her initial findings. Around her, alien academics from dozens of species chittered, hummed, and pulsed with excited energy. Never before had a single demonstration challenged so many fundamental assumptions about biological capability and physical law. "The readings are consistent across all our sensor arrays," Dr. Kethvar announced, her musical voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The human subject, Instructor Sarah Chen, intercepted weapons-grade plasma constructs, using only organic tissue protected by basic textile materials. No energy shields, no quantum enhancement, no technological assistance of any kind. Professor Velkim's energy form flickered with agitation. That should be impossible. Plasma at those energy levels would instantly vaporize organic matter. The kinetic force alone should have shattered her skeletal structure. And yet, Dr. Kethvar continued, "Our thermal sensors show that the plasma temperature dropped to manageable levels at the moment of contact. Energy dispersion occurred along pathways that our models cannot predict or explain. It is as if the human subject instinctively understood how to redirect the energy flow, rather than absorb it." 8. R. Reese. A Krathan xenobiologist raised her bio-enhanced appendage. "Have we considered the possibility of unknown technological implants? Perhaps the humans have developed enhancement systems that our scanners cannot detect." "Negative," replied Dr. Zerth, the Academy's chief medical officer. His crystalline sensors had performed the most detailed biological scan in galactic history. The human subject's physiology is completely baseline for her species. No implants, no genetic modifications, no artificial enhancements. Her cellular structure is identical to standard human patterns. The room erupted in confused discussions as academics struggled to reconcile this information with their understanding of biological limits. In the far corner of the chamber, Dr. Yith Ara, an ancient Veltar philosopher, whose energy form had existed for over 10,000 years, pulsed with a different kind of recognition. "Perhaps," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. We have been asking the wrong questions. The room fell silent as the elder energy being continued. We assume that what the human accomplished defies physical law. But what if the human simply understands physical law in ways that we do not? Dr. Kethvar chimed with skeptical harmonics. Respected elder, physical law is universal. Energy behaves according to predictable patterns, regardless of the observer's understanding. Does it? Dr. Yathara asked. We have all evolved beyond the need to directly interact with dangerous energy forces. We use technology to manipulate plasma, quantum fields to deflect kinetic impacts, computational matrices to predict and avoid threats. When did any of us last touch raw energy with our own physical forms? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every species represented in the chamber had transcended direct physical confrontation millions of years ago. They had evolved beyond the need for such primitive interactions, developing technology and enhancement systems that allowed them to wage war from safe distances. Dr. Xerth's medical sensors whirred as he accessed historical databanks. The human homeworld, Earth, has been classified as a Category 7 death world. Extreme weather systems, aggressive predatory life forms, unstable geological activity, and electromagnetic phenomena that would incapacitate most galactic species. Continue, Dr. Yathara encouraged. Humans evolved under constant physical threat. Their nervous systems developed to process multiple sensory inputs simultaneously while maintaining fine motor control under extreme stress. Their reflexes adapted to track and intercept fast-moving objects, not as conscious decisions, but as automatic responses. A Zephyrian computational specialist's crystal form brightened with sudden understanding. You are suggesting that humans developed biological capabilities that we replaced with technology. More than that, Dr. Yathara replied. I am suggesting that humans never lost the ability to directly interface with physical forces because their environment never allowed them to. While we evolved beyond the need for such skills, they were forced to perfect them. Dr. Kethvar began running calculations on this new hypothesis. If human neural pathways are optimized for real-time threat assessment and physical response, their reaction times and pattern recognition could theoretically operate below the threshold of conscious thought. Instinct, said Dr. Xerth. What humans call instinct may actually be sophisticated biological computing systems running below the level of conscious awareness. The implications began cascading through the assembled academics. If humans could process and respond to physical threats using biological systems that operated faster than thought, it would explain not only Sarah's demonstration, but potentially much more about human military effectiveness. This would mean, Professor Velkim said slowly, that when humans encounter energy weapons, projectiles, or other physical threats, they are not making conscious decisions to evade or intercept. Their nervous systems are automatically calculating optimal response patterns. It would also explain, added Dr. Xerth, why human military reports consistently describe combat scenarios that should have resulted in casualties, but somehow did not. We interpreted these as luck or inferior enemy accuracy. But if humans unconsciously maneuver to optimize survival probability, Dr. Yathara pulsed with satisfied energy. The galaxy has spent millennia developing technology to replace biological limitations. But what if those limitations were actually evolutionary adaptations that we never needed to develop? In the depths of the Academy's biological research lab, Dr. Xerth began analyzing Sarah's cellular structure with instruments designed to study microscopic detail. What he found challenged everything the medical community thought they knew about neural development. Human neural pathways showed incredible redundancy and interconnection. Where most species had developed specialized brain regions for specific functions, humans had evolved dense networks that could reroute processing through multiple pathways simultaneously. Their nervous systems looked like backup systems for backup systems. Remarkable, Dr. Xerth muttered to himself. It is as if human biology expects catastrophic failure and has prepared for it. Multiple redundant processing centers, distributed computational networks, automatic response systems that operate independently of conscious control. But the most shocking discovery came when he analyzed Sarah's muscle fiber density. Human skeletal muscle showed microscopic structures that were unlike anything in the galactic biological database. The fibers were designed not just for strength or speed, but for precision control under extreme conditions. They are biological machines, he whispered, studying the data with growing amazement. Organic systems optimized for survival in hostile environments. No wonder they can interface with energy constructs. Their entire physiology is designed to adapt to dangerous situations. When the research team finally compiled their findings, the conclusion was both simple and revolutionary. Humans were not technologically inferior to the galactic community. They had simply evolved biological solutions to problems that other species solved with technology. And those biological solutions, refined by millions of years of survival on a death world, were in many ways superior to artificial alternatives. 3 months after the incident at the Galactic Military Academy, the universe had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The recording of Sarah Chen catching a plasma dart with her bare hand had been transmitted across every communication network in known space, analyzed by experts, debated in academic circles, and discussed in military command centers from the core worlds to the frontier colonies. What began as curiosity had evolved into something approaching awe, and in some quarters, genuine concern. The Galactic Defense Council convened an emergency session on the neutral world of Proxima Centauri. Representatives from major military powers gathered in the crystalline amphitheater that had hosted peace negotiations for over 1,000 years. But this was not about peace. This was about power, and the sudden realization that they might have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of warfare itself. Admiral Thekvar, Supreme Commander of the Veltar energy fleets, pulsed with barely controlled anxiety as he addressed the assembly. Honored delegates, we must face an uncomfortable truth. For millennia, we have dismissed human military capabilities as primitive and ineffective. Recent events suggest that this assessment was catastrophically incorrect. The massive viewing screen behind him displayed tactical analyses that had been classified at the highest levels until this moment. Battle reports from human conflicts that had previously been filed as curiosities now took on ominous new significance. The Battle of Titan, Admiral Thekvar continued, where human forces achieved a 98% interception rate against guided missile attacks using only kinetic point defense systems. We assumed their equipment was simply more accurate than reported. We now understand that human operators were manually tracking and engaging targets that our automated systems cannot even detect. Murmurs of unease rippled through the assembly as more data appeared on the screen. The defense of Luna Station. Human soldiers repelling boarding actions by simply catching enemy grenades and throwing them back. We filed this as exaggerated propaganda. Our current analysis suggests it was literal truth. General Krixtal of the Krathan Bio-Enhancement Corps raised her armored appendage. Admiral, are you suggesting that an entire species of beings exists that can perform military functions we require advanced technology to accomplish? That is exactly what I am suggesting, General. And more concerning, they appear to view these capabilities as completely normal. To humans, catching high-velocity projectiles is a children's game. Reacting to threats faster than conscious thought is basic survival instinct. The implications were staggering. Every military doctrine in the galaxy was based on the assumption that biological beings required technological enhancement to function effectively in combat. Weapons were designed to overwhelm enhanced reflexes. Tactics were developed to counter artificial intelligence systems, and strategies assumed that opponents would rely on predictable technological responses. But humans operated outside these assumptions entirely. Commander Velshan of the Galactic Intelligence Corps transmitted a priority data burst to the assembly. Delegates, we have intercepted communications from human military academies. They are adapting their training programs. The viewing screen shifted to show translated excerpts from Earth military databases. Training schedules that included plasma interception drills, tactical manuals that discussed energy redirection techniques, course curricula that treated catching superheated projectiles as basic soldier skills. They are systematically developing military applications for abilities we did not know existed, Commander Velshan reported. And they are doing so with the same casual efficiency they apply to all their other military innovations. Dr. Yith Ara, the ancient Veltar philosopher, had been invited to address the assembly as an expert on human capability research. Her energy form pulsed with calm certainty as she spoke. Honored delegates, you continue to view this through the lens of technology versus biology. But humans do not see themselves as limited biological beings who need enhancement. They see themselves as capable beings who choose their tools carefully. She gestured toward the data displays, showing human military equipment. Observe their weapons. Simple, kinetic projectiles that rely on precision rather than power. Vehicles that prioritize maneuverability over armor. Communication systems that function without advanced AI support. They have deliberately chosen technologies that complement their natural abilities rather than replace them. Admiral Thekvar's energy form flickered with growing alarm. Are you saying they could have developed advanced energy weapons or quantum enhancement systems, but chose not to? I am saying they did not need to. Why would a species that can catch plasma with their bare hands require energy shields? Why would beings who can track multiple targets simultaneously need computer-assisted targeting systems? The assembly fell silent as the full implications sank in. Humanity had not failed to advance technologically. They had advanced selectively, developing only the tools that enhanced their existing capabilities rather than replacing them. Meanwhile, back at the Galactic Military Academy, a very different kind of revolution was taking place. The Academy's training programs were being completely restructured based on what they had learned from studying human methodology. Cadet Zixtal stood in the center of the same arena where he had launched his plasma dart months earlier. But now, instead of creating energy weapons, he was learning to move like a human. The training was brutal, frustrating, and unlike anything he had ever experienced. Feel the pattern, Sarah Chen instructed, watching as the young Veltar tried to track a slow-moving training sphere with his energy form. Don't calculate its trajectory. Sense where it wants to go. Zixtal's energy body fluctuated with effort as he attempted to apply human-style intuitive responses instead of his species' natural computational approaches. Around the arena, cadets from dozens of species struggled with similar exercises. The Zephyrian cadet was learning to react without her crystalline calculation matrices. The Krathan representative was training to move with organic fluidity instead of bio-enhanced precision. Every student was being forced to abandon the technological enhancements they had relied on since birth and instead develop the biological capabilities that humans took for granted. This is impossible, Zixtal complained after missing the training sphere for the 20th time. My species did not evolve these capabilities. We are energy beings. We manipulate forces through will and calculation, not through instinct. Sarah nodded sympathetically. It took humans millions of years to develop these skills, and we had highly motivated teachers. What teachers? Asked the Krathan cadet, her bio-enhanced voice carrying harmonics of frustration. Sarah gestured toward the Academy's massive windows, which showed the peaceful gardens and carefully controlled environment of the Academy complex. Predators that could kill us before we knew they were there. Weather that could change from safe to deadly in minutes. A planet where making mistakes meant dying. She turned back to face her struggling students. You evolved in safe environments, where you had time to think, plan, and calculate. We evolved in a place where thinking too long meant becoming something's lunch. Different environments, different solutions. But you are teaching us to think like humans, the Zephyrian cadet observed. Why? Why? Sarah's expression became serious. Because the universe is bigger and more dangerous than any of us realized. And sometimes, when the technology fails and the calculations break down and there's no time to think, sometimes you need to be able to catch the dart with your bare hands. The training session continued. Alien cadets slowly learning to trust instincts they had never needed to develop. Some would master these techniques, becoming hybrid warriors who combined the best of technological enhancement with biological capability. Others would struggle with concepts that challenged everything their species had become. But all of them would remember the lesson that a human had taught them. That sometimes, the most advanced response to advanced technology was no technology at all. In the months that followed, the phrase, "catch the dart," became galactic shorthand for achieving the impossible through pure biological capability. Human military advisors became the most sought-after consultants in known space, not because of their technology, but because of their ability to function when technology failed. And on Earth, children still played catch in their backyards, unknowingly preparing for a universe that was finally beginning to understand what it meant to be human.